Columbus, Ohio. And for the first time since 2000, the Michigan Wolverines come into the horseshoe, just kind of dominate the Ohio State Buckeyes. 45-23 was your final. And there were several moments, Garrett, in the first half where I really thought that Ohio State could have taken control. They were just one or two big plays away from maybe causing Michigan to lose some confidence, but they just never really did. And the game really flipped on its head halfway through the third quarter when Michigan, who had just taken the lead 24-20, on the first play of a drive, the Buckeyes get hit with holding and unsportsmanlike conduct on the same play. They were just never the same from that point on. They just kind of went into a shell. Michigan took advantage, and that was all she wrote. They had a couple of big plays. Donovan Edwards had an absolute monster day with 216 yards and 2 touchdowns, with Blake Corum unable to go. And no shade to the kid, JJ McCarthy. I think I would describe it as not pretty but effective, right? Like he hit some big plays, and obviously anytime you can hit the big plays, you're going to be happy about that. I think there were a couple, especially in the first half before he kind of got his feet under him, that I was a little like, okay, like that worked, but it might not work the whole day. But listen, when you win 45-23, there's not much you can complain about, right?
No, certainly not. And I want to go ahead and say this is just kind of what Michigan does, and this is why I picked them to win this game. I thought that it was going to be, a good win for them. I didn't think it would be nearly this decisive, just for the sheer fact that they're playing a very good Ohio State team on the road. I thought that Ohio State was going to come out and look a lot more competitive than they did. It turns out, man, there were some real issues to that, drive that you were talking about with the holding and the unsportsmanlike. That made it 1st and 35. They
Yep.
were able to get it back to 4th and 6, and you could see CJ Stroud wanted to go for it. He wanted to go for it and keep the pressure on. Instead, they get pulled, they punt. I think they ended up punting that one through the end zone, anyways. And just a really rough turn of events to watch. People go ahead and turn that around and score again. Um, Man, I was texting with Teddy, who we did the special episode with during the game, and I said, I've got some bad news. It doesn't look like Blake Corum's going to win the Heisman, but I do have some good news. And we talked about how the good news was, man, it looked like, Michigan was really putting it on him. I mean, Donovan Edwards, 22 carries, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, both of those touchdowns came on very, very long rushes, but this is just what Michigan does. They sit there, they wear you down, they play well on defense, and then just through the game, if you can't stay perfect on defense every rep, they're going to take advantage of that towards the end of the game. The 2 touchdown runs, I think it was like 75 and 85 or something like that. Those were the 2 longest runs by Michigan against Ohio State ever.
Wow.
He
Yeah.
set the record twice in the same game, and there's a lot that has to go into a big upset like this. I think setting 2 records like that is pretty big. Mike Sanristel, I can't remember how you say his name. He was number 0 on the defense. He broke up 2 huge passes in the end zone that could have been touchdowns for Ohio State. He played a heck of a game, including that one where the tight end, it looked like he came down with it. He just poked it out at the last second, did everything that your cornerback coach wants you to do as a defender. So, extremely good effort by the Wolverines. Flip side for Ohio State, I thought that they had some issues moving the ball off schedule. This is what I had been saying for a little while. I thought that it was a little bit concerning that when things didn't go right throughout this year, they had issues on offense. We talked about the Penn State game. I still think maybe even with that Northwestern game, I think it was a little bit telling that, yes, the weather was bad, but they couldn't run the football. They couldn't find ways to manufacture offense on a day where the wind was blowing like crazy. I don't think that we paid enough attention to it going into this game. And so that's why the shock was there, right? CJ Stroud, he's a heck of a guy, heck of an athlete. He's going to make someone extremely happy when he goes off to the NFL. It just seems like, man, there's something about the way he was coached or something about his game at this point in his development where if you can rattle him, if you can kind of get the pressure into him, and if you can maybe get him to start fleeing the pocket, he really has trouble picking up some of those first downs and figuring out where his read is. So those are some of my concerns. He still played well, all things considered, but definitely not good enough to win this game. I think that this just proves that Michigan is currently the best team in the country. I don't think that that's super controversial. I didn't necessarily believe it going into the game, but Michigan is currently the best team in the country. They just dominated number 2 on the road, a team that people are still arguing deserve a playoff spot. If we're going to argue that they still deserve a playoff spot, then if you can go to their house and beat them by 20 plus, I would argue you're probably the best team in the country. we'll talk about the other teams in this later, but in terms of just sheer weaknesses, I don't see them with Michigan. You talked about JJ McCarthy. This will be kind of my last little thing here. JJ McCarthy kept them in this game in the first half. They
Absolutely.
did not
Yeah.
run the ball at all in the first half to finish with as many
They
rushing
kept
yards as they
showing the
had.
rushing yard stats, and it was deep in the second quarter. They had like 1 rushing yard.
Yeah, I think they might have finished with either single digits or very low double digits for the half.
Yeah.
Like I remember going into it and they say whoever wins the rushing battle wins the game, and currently Michigan has like 13 or something like that. JJ, he kept them in the game. He kept coming up with huge throws. I can't remember the receiver's name at the moment, but there's that one guy who broke a tackle and rattled off for the first one, got loose towards the end of it, and got loose on a post route to score the second one. He was incredible, but JJ kept them in this thing when the run game wasn't there. So we've talked about finding multiple ways to beat teams. Well, they beat you just about every way they could on Saturday. At first, they started beating you by passing the ball, staying in it. Then they beat you on defense. Then they beat you in the run game. This is a very, very good Michigan team. I think they have to be your odds-on favorite to win the whole thing this year, just based on where their team is at this moment.
Yeah. Cornelius Johnson, I think, is who you're
Yeah,
talking about with
Johnson. Yep.
that 4 receptions, 160 yards, and those 2 first half touchdowns that were both bombs. Yeah. Color me shocked that Ohio State just wasn't up to the task of going
Yeah.
toe to toe with Michigan. And this is the second year in a row. And I think this is, if you're looking for, maybe it's a little too early to call it a fatal flaw, but a possible fatal flaw for Ryan Day at Ohio State. I don't know that his teams necessarily have the intensity or aggression to go toe to toe with a team that's just going to come punch him in the mouth. We saw that in the first game of the year against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame kind of came out and punched him in the mouth defensively. And Ohio State was able to win that game against, I think, a less talented Notre Dame team than what they faced in Michigan. But, you walk away from that kind of impressed that they were able to win an ugly game, but also, you see that Notre Dame was able to take the game to Ohio State. And that's exactly what Michigan did. I don't want to spend our whole episode on this game, but it was a huge, huge indicator. I don't know if you can draw too many parallels for the future of this division or the future, but I think a lot of Ohio State fans are now starting to question that this has happened 2 years in a row against Michigan. You know, are they built? Is Michigan better built to beat Ohio State than Ohio State is Michigan? And I think right now you have to say Michigan is built better to beat Ohio State because after they went up 20-17, this is Ohio State's possessions: punt, end of half, punt, 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 field goal, interception, interception. Like
Wow. So 3 points in the second half.
3 points after going up 20-17 with about 4 minutes left in the second quarter.
Wow.
So Michigan just took the game to them in the second half. They made better adjustments. Ohio State faced some adversity and just could not battle back from it. And it was not something you expect to see from a team as talented as Ohio State. What my concern about them is right now is they have all the flash, right? They have the skill position players, they have the quarterback, they have all the pieces you need to be successful, but they don't necessarily have the physicality to go toe to toe with a team that wants to bully them. And it's bitten them 2 years in a row now.
Yeah, and I think that this defensive unit was more equipped for it. Obviously, the score got run up towards the end because, like I said, that's just what Michigan does to you.
And Michigan was
Um,
looking to run up the score as well. They were
right, and
they were
they were
not going to be
absolutely.
satisfied with getting out of there with a 3-point win. They smelled blood in the water and they were going to go score.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that the problem is offensively, I think there's a lot more there. And 45 points, that's not a great number, obviously. But man, like if you're Ohio State putting up 23, there just wasn't, like you were saying, there wasn't a physicality there. There wasn't that streak of, on the offensive line, we're gonna maintain what we want to do. We're gonna get that push up front. We're gonna, I don't know, get the pass rush that we need, or the pass protection that we need just to keep you you know, on your end of the field and keep the guys off our quarterback and give him time to throw. There wasn't any of that tenacity. And I think that that's just kind of what was missing from them towards the end of this game, especially. They came out just fine, but like we are saying, they get hit in the mouth. How do they respond? There's just something missing there, and I think part of it's just the fact that they don't really face a lot of challenges through the year. They don't, and that's, you can't affect who you play, but they don't face too many challenges during the year, and I don't think that they even really believed that they were really in any danger to lose to Michigan again. I think there was a little bit of that attitude of like, yeah, they got us last year, but it was snowing and it was at Michigan. We'll get them back this year. And I just don't think they believed they could lose that game. And then, all of a sudden they're losing that game and, time's ticking out and there goes Donovan Edwards again, and you're like, oh, well, I guess we're going to lose this game. And so, I think this is a little bit of a wake up call for Ohio State that right now they're not the big boys in the Big Ten.
No,
It's
they are
Michigan.
not.
Michigan
No,
runs
they are
your
not.
conference right now for 2 years in a row. Michigan, they've run your conference. They've lost one game to Michigan State the last couple of years in conference. This is their conference right now. They can do whatever they want to do in it, and that's not what you're doing right now. Ohio State, 2 non-competitive games against Michigan the last couple of years. And to make it worse, the year before that, they ducked them because of the COVID year. So it's been since 2019 since they've beaten Michigan.
It's
It,
it's now
it's
now
been a little
a
while
while.
since it's been a little while since they've been able to play them. So I think that this is awesome for Michigan. Absolutely, Michigan fans should be enjoying this. But if you're Ohio State, you have to acknowledge that, yeah, maybe you guys aren't the Kings right now, and y'all got to do some real work to figure out how to get back on top.
Gracious him! How about